I'm very grateful to be here and would like to thank the selection committee, Mr. Beitzad Fatmi, and Nurdin Kaparov and Mustafa Ulukaya of the Pacifica Institute for enabling me to be here today. Is this a mic that I have to be really close to? Can you hear okay? It's good here? Not too, okay. It is an honor to present dialogue as practiced by the Jewish-Palestinian Dialogue Group of the San Francisco Bay Area. Here you can see our founders. The group was founded in 1992. And I'll begin with the stereotype about us Jews. You put two of us together and you'll get three opinions. A famous Talmudic principle, pardon me, Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim, describes this phenomenon. These and those are both the words of the living God. An example, two neighbors could not reach an agreement, so they took their case to the local rabbi. The rabbi listened to the first man's case, thoughtfully nodded his head and said, "You're right." He then listened to the second man's case, nodded and said, "You're also right." But the rabbi's assistant said, "No, Rabbi, they can't both be right." And the rabbi thought for just a moment and said, "You're right too." This parable is an illustration of that Talmudic principle. Judaism supports dialogue. Jewish tradition supports dialogue by its emphasis on the validity of diverse viewpoints. Elu ve'elu. You do not have to agree, but you have to listen to understand. Our dialogue group has an international reach. For example, in 2010, co-founders Len and Libby traveled to Nigeria for the second annual International Conference on Youth and Interfaith Communication. We have more. You'll have to go to the website. In the interest of time, I didn't include everything. We have presented panels in schools, cultural centers, houses of worship, and community organizations such as the Ramallah Club of San Francisco and the Jewish Community Relations Council of the Bay Area. Our most recent panel was at the Sonoma State University's first lecture in their 15-week annual lecture series presented by the Center for the Study of the Holocaust and Education. The next day, we had an experiential workshop on the right, and the students had an opportunity to learn their own dialogue skills as we teach it. Such skills enable participants to have meaningful conversations around difficult topics, safely and without judgment. For us, dialogue begins with personal story. My story begins with my father, Werner Leo Löwenstein of blessed memory. With less than $5 in his pocket and having lost everything, Dad fled Nazi Germany in 1937. He was armed with two documents. One was his diploma from the University of Berlin Medical School in 1934, and the other was a letter of recommendation from the Mother Superior of a Catholic hospital in Cologne, where he did an internship. And it's interesting, as an academic, his medical diploma is actually written in Latin. He couldn't wait to become an American citizen so he could join the U.S. Army and return to Germany to fight the Nazis. He was part of Patton's Third Army as they advanced into Germany and fought he was in a medical battalion just behind the advancing American lines and was part of the Battle of the Bulge. Dad met and married my mother, Hazel Anderson, in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is my hometown. I don't want to say the hoo-hoo, I'm a Hoosier. Okay. Unusual for the time, Mother had a master's degree, and education was important to both my parents. Education, he said, as a man who lost everything was taken away from him. Education is something they can never take away from you. That was his German accented mantra. My husband and I have managed to pass on his mantra to our 3 adult children, all of whom have advanced degrees. And as a little girl, I loved going to St. Anthony's Hospital with my daddy on weekends. He would find a friendly nun to babysit me while he went to the hospital emergency room to see one of his patients. My mother was born and reared a Mormon in Utah, converting to Judaism when she married my dad. Her mantra also echoes in my ears. God doesn't care if you're a Jew, a Catholic, a Protestant, a Hindu, or a Buddhist, as long as you are a good Jew, a good Christian, a good Hindu, and so forth. I thought that was the way of the world until I went off to college, and then I learned at Northwestern University that that's not the way of the world. And now my story begins. When I appear on panels, I explain how I came to the Jewish-Palestinian Dialogue Group. Flash forward. For 35 years, I have been a Catholic educator. 9 years at the Jesuit-run University of San Francisco, where I earned my doctorate, and 26 years at Notre Dame de Namur University in Belmont, California. Being in Catholic institutions evoke comforting memories from my childhood, playing with the nuns at St. Anthony's. As a second-generation German Jew, the Holocaust became my professional as well as a personal focus. With a colleague, I introduced a semesters-long Holocaust class at NDNU. I taught it solo for 25 years and became a self-defined Holocaust Jew. Recently, I tried to explain to a non-Jewish friend what it meant to be a Holocaust Jew. I showed her my phone as I tried to type in the word audio, and after the first 2 letters, Auschwitz popped up. So I see the world through a Holocaust lens. The hollow-eyed, starving children of Gaza look no different to me than pictures of children during the Holocaust, suffering from starvation rations or no rations at all. Reports that many Gazans had no water, food, or electricity remind me of the Warsaw Ghetto before the uprising, when the Nazis turned the power and the water off randomly at will, and there was a shortage of everything. And now the rubble of Gaza looks to me like the rubble of the Warsaw Ghetto after the uprising. Holocaust Jew, I refuse to be a bystander. I must speak out. My parents reared me to be a proud Jew, but I feel shame every time I read a report of the number of innocents killed in Gaza, creating families without children and children without families. Images of Gaza now leveled remind me of the German city of Dresden at the end of World War II, leveled by British and American bombs. Ethicists still debate, is the strategic bombings of cities during warfare ethical or a war crime? With cousins living in Tel Aviv and with a tremendous love for Israel, it is painful for me to hear the charge of genocide to describe what has happened and is happening in Gaza. I have tried to clarify my own feelings about this charge. I admit I am still working on it. In 1998, I received a fellowship from the National Catholic Center for Holocaust Education at Seton Hill University to attend their summer institute in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, one of the holiest cities in the world for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. My spiritual IQ elevates 10 notches every time I enter the old city. My Jewish friends couldn't believe it. You're going to Jerusalem to study the Holocaust with Catholics? The center has a partnership with Yad Vashem in Israel, the world's Holocaust Remembrance Center. Okay. Most of our professors were from Hebrew University, except for Sister Gemma, the co-founder of the Catholic Center and the nun in charge of the Seton Hill group. Sister Gemma lectured on Vatican II and the subsequent reforms of the Catholic Church regarding Jews and other non-Christian religions. I was the only Jew in the Seton Hill group. Yad Vashem matched us with a group of Jewish Holocaust educators, and the two groups learned from each other as well as from the curriculum. On weekends that summer, Sister Gemma took our group to Christian sites. Although it was my fourth visit to Israel, I had never heard of Terra Sancta, the Holy Land for Christians. And I got whiplash on a bus tour of Jerusalem with my new Catholic friends. Who knew there were so many churches and Christian shrines in Jerusalem, often behind high walls? And over there, King Solomon built a temple to the Egyptian gods. What? The things Israeli guides don't tell Jewish groups. It turned out King Solomon, with 700 wives and 300 concubines, my grandchildren might be watching, so I'll move on, had just married an Egyptian princess. She wanted a place to pray to her gods. The accommodating bridegroom had a shrine built just for her. We retraced the steps of Jesus on the way to his crucifixion on the Via Dolorosa, pausing at the last half dozen or so stations of the cross. We were now in the Arab quarter of Jerusalem, a marketplace teeming with veiled Muslim women and children playing happily. A few darted through our group. At each station, Sister Gemma quickly found the relevant passage from her post-it note studded Bible. And after she read, they all sang a relevant hymn. Religion should not be a spectator sport, but watching them was contagious. At each station, their piety elevated my spirituality to ever greater heights. But at each station, our guide, Pau, a former monk turned archaeology professor at Ben-Gurion University, placed my spirituality on a seesaw. After all, we were an academic group, so we needed a scientific perspective. After the prayers and the singing, Pau pointed out that there was no archaeological evidence that Jesus stumbled here or that Veronica wiped his brow there. Besides, he added, Veronica is the Greek word for handkerchief, and probably there was no one named Veronica at that time. The scientific reality that this was all in their heads did nothing to stem the reverence of these praying pilgrims. However, Pau's scientific comments grounded my spiritual seesaw with a resounding thud at each station. And I wondered what the indifferent Arab shoppers thought, seeing this devout group of Christians praying and singing in some of the holiest sites of their tradition, but to them was simply a marketplace. As we threaded our way through the Arab quarter toward the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I felt a greater presence in a moment without language, which to this day I cannot describe in words. It was so profound for me. I spoke with a physicist who holds a PhD from the Technical University of Munich and lives in Munich with her family. I asked her to explain religious phenomena, trying to understand my own, what I deemed a religious experience from a physicist's point of view. And so since this is an academic audience, we need grounding in science, just like following the footsteps of Jesus with an archaeologist. And I was proud of my question, having done a little research. Does string theory explain religious experience since it supports parallel dimensions? She immediately corrected my question. String theory, which is currently an untestable mathematical theory, proposes extra-spatial dimensions, which are not quite the same as parallel universes. Even if parallel universes did exist, that wouldn't validate or invalidate religious experiences which operate outside the realm of reproducing. Is that 15 minutes? My 15 minutes of fame just ended. Which operate outside the realm of reproducible scientific experimentation. Thud. End of the scientific analysis of my religious experience. Full disclosure, the physicist is my daughter. Last page. Words finally surfaced. Following the footsteps of Jesus in Jerusalem brought me to Islamic Israel, which, like Christian Israel, I had never witnessed. And I realized that to understand the totality of my beloved Israel, I would have to reach out to a Muslim group to study and learn and return and find the sites that are holy to Islam. So after my return home, I tried to find a local Muslim group with whom I could study and learn, and ultimately go back to Israel with. Instead, the Jewish-Palestinian living room dialogue group kept populating my searches, thanks to the new search engine, Google. It was 1999, the eve of the new millennium, and I discovered the co-founders, you saw them earlier, Libby and Len Traubman, he is now of blessed memory, and Nahida and Adham Salem lived just minutes from my San Mateo, California home. I called, and yes, there are Muslim members in the dialogue group. I joined, became active, served on panels, and gave presentations. Although I never did encounter Muslim Israel the way I experienced Christian Israel, I came to appreciate the Palestinian people and their profound historical connection to the land, which is often not taught to Jews. To conclude, it will take all three of us, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, to build lasting peace in the Holy Land. Together, we must transform historic enmity into empathic communication. We must learn not only to see the image of God in one another, but also be the image of God reflected in the other. As a retired professor of communication, I am convinced that dialogue is the best way, and perhaps the only way, to create these connections. At last week's workshop, where we taught students how to dialogue in this way, one young man observed, quote, "Dialogue is like face-to-face humanity, a trust thing. It's comforting to know you can show up and be who you really are." A young lady pointed out, dialogue creates a safe space to be real. Wisdom from students. The Jewish-Palestinian Dialogue Group of the Bay Area has an ambitious agenda. We hope to create a public peace process in the Middle East, one student, one story, and one relationship at a time.